What's going on, all you brainiacs out there, and welcome to a very special edition of the Fantasy Football Laboratory. I am the King of Trade, Shane Palma, joined as always by Spitfire Lucas Parrish.
What's going on, guys?
And the chemist, Jack McGrath.
Shane, how are we doing today?
By the time the people are listening to this, it will be the next day, but today we found out the news that Julio Jones has officially been traded from the Atlanta Falcons to the Tennessee Titans. Now, we've speculated on this for weeks. I mean, we've gone back and forth, the Rams, the Ravens, the 49ers, Chargers. Where could he possibly end up? The Chiefs. We didn't know. But the Titans were one of the names that we talked about a lot because we talked about A.J. Brown in the same conversation as Julio Jones. Now, this video is dedicated solely to the impact on the Falcons and on the Titans with the trade of Julio Jones. So let's start with the Titans, and let's start with, in particular, Julio Jones. Now, Jack, in our group chat, you texted that you think this could be, which is extreme, like beyond hot take, I feel like. This could be Julio Jones's best fantasy season yet. Is that what you said?
I think there's a potential that it could be. Now, I don't think it will be. I think we could see something pretty special from Julio Jones this year. So I was running through the numbers a little bit. Ryan Tannehill threw 33 passes. Now, stick with me. This is going to be a lot of numbers here. But Ryan Tannehill threw 33 touchdown passes last year. 11 were to A.J. Brown. 8 were to Jonnu Smith, who's no longer on the team. 5 were to Corey Davis, who's no longer on the team. And then 9 were thrown elsewhere. There were 3 thrown to receivers who were like Adam Humphries. There were 2 to running backs, backup running backs not named Derrick Henry. And there were 4 to backup tight ends. So that means there are a lot of touchdowns to go around for Julio Jones. What has Julio Jones's problem always been in terms of fantasy production, at least for the past 3 or 4 years for Julio Jones? It's been getting in the end zone. The yardage is always there. The catches are always there. He hasn't been getting in the end zone. So there are 33 touchdowns from this team. This frees up basically like 13 touchdowns with Smith leaving and with Corey Davis leaving. I went into some projections here. So there are 12 total free from the tight ends, if you include the 4 that were to the backup tight ends and then 8 to Jonnu Smith.
That's going to be Anthony Firkser right there.
And we think it's going to be Anthony Firkser. I don't think he scores 8 touchdowns like Jonnu Smith did last year, right? I think he gets 5. I think 5's a good number.
4 or 5.
I think 3 to the other tight ends is fair. So that means 8 total to the tight end position, right? Because it's a less talented group than it was last year. All right, 8 for tight ends. Let's say the running backs get the same. There's 2 to the running backs. The backup running backs are Derrick Henry in terms of passing touchdowns. That gives us a ton of passing touchdowns for the wide receiver position. If Ryan Tannehill throws 33 touchdowns again and only 12 go to the tight end and running back positions, that means there's 21 touchdowns to the wide receiver position to go around if Ryan Tannehill throws the same number of touchdowns that he did last year. If 11 go to A.J. Brown, that means there are 10 touchdowns left. They're going to be split between Julio Jones and Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds, in his entire career, has only had 9 receiving touchdowns in his 4-year career. He is not a red zone target. I'll give him 2 touchdowns. That means I think Julio has a solid, safe bet of getting 8 touchdowns next season. You throw in Corey Davis's averages from last year with that 8 touchdown projection. That's 75 yards per game. That's 5 receptions per game. I'll bet you Julio matches that if that's what Corey Davis did last year. He's a more talented receiver. I'll give him 2.5 more points per game in terms of fantasy, whether that's getting 10 more yards per game or getting a whole nother reception per game or getting 15 more yards per game than Corey Davis did last year. I mean, I could see Julio Jones averaging 18 fantasy points in PPR, which would put him at wide receiver 5 from last year in terms of average points per game.
Jack, I need to know now. You're off Josh Reynolds' sleeper hype train, right?
Oh, yes, completely. Josh Reynolds is gone. I mean, he's going to have Adam Humphries numbers from last year now. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen.
But you said safe bet, right? We are assuming safe bet if Julio Jones is a safe bet to stay on the field.
Yes, that's the key. That's the key.
If every player's health was guaranteed that they were going to play every game, I would probably have Julio Jones inside my top 8. I'm not going to lie with you. I'm not going to front anything. I think he would be there. What is he, almost 33, if not 33 right
33.
now?
Yep.
Injury history off the charts. We don't like to project injuries for players, but we have to realize that the past, especially with a player who has this much under their belt, is definitely a significant portion of where we have to value some of these guys. After the trade, I moved Julio Jones up to my wide receiver 14 overall. I could see him maybe cracking that number 12 spot for a back end wide receiver one. I have him over Mike Evans, over CeeDee Lamb, over Kenny Golladay, over Adam Thielen, but I won't put him before Amari Cooper, Michael Thomas, Allen Robinson. I think those guys are still all safer bets than him. And while this is mainly Julio Jones, we got to talk about the other people that around him that he affects once joining that offense. And one of those guys that you mentioned, that wide receiver room, is AJ Brown. Now, I know the initial reaction that everyone had was that AJ Brown down the tubes, down the toilet. He's not going to produce the numbers that we like. I think that's false. I think this is going to help. I think this could be a very similar situation with honestly a better quarterback. Matt Ryan, I think Ryan Tannehill's an upgrade over Matt Ryan, especially with the deep ball. Very underrated Ryan Tannehill was. I'll just throw this out there. Compared to Patrick Mahomes in the last 24 starts that each quarterback had, their QB ratings, Tannehill with a 114, Mahomes with a 105.9. Mahomes hasn't beat by 900 passing yards. Tannehill has 61 touchdowns to Mahomes' 56. They both have 10 interceptions, and Ryan Tannehill has a better completion percentage by a full point.
Last year, when the Titans went to the AFC Championship game and lost to the Chiefs, right? Ryan Tannehill had the highest passer rating among any quarterback in the NFL on deep passes. Ryan Tannehill is an exceptional deep ball passer. And why is that? It's because Derrick Henry opens up the deep ball extremely well, and Ryan Tannehill can lay it in there perfectly. It's Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry are the perfect combination. The Titans could not have drawn that up better if they had tried. You have Ryan Tannehill, who is a really good deep ball passer, like a super underrated deep ball passer accuracy-wise. And then you have Derrick Henry, who's obviously Derrick Henry. So really good combination there. I agree with both you guys. Julio, I didn't move. I've got him at wide receiver 16.
And that's fair.
I have him below CeeDee Lamb and Kenny Golladay, but aside from that, Shane, I'm with you. You know, again, the age, the injury, that's the only reason I've got him below those guys. CeeDee Lamb, I'd love the upside. I might move him above Kenny Golladay. I'm going back and forth on that one, absolutely. But look, Julio, you're right. I mean, Jack, all your numbers make a lot of sense. I'm not sure where all of that got to wide receiver 5, because it sounded like you were just adding 2.5 points per game to Corey Davis's total, and that was enough for wide receiver 5.
So what I did was Corey Davis had 5 touchdowns on the season last year. I'd expect Julio, based on Smith leaving, based on the tight end room changing, based on Davis leaving, I'd expect him to, I think a better projection for Julio Jones for next year touchdown wise is going to be 8. So I think if 8's there, that puts him in that spot. And then he would be adding 2.5 fantasy points as well based on talent level. I mean, talent level alone. Julio Jones is far and away better than Corey Davis still. So I added 2.5 points while giving Julio Jones 8 touchdowns based on Corey Davis's stats last year.
Where did you guys move both AJ Brown and Tannehill? I moved Tannehill personally up to 8 overall in my QB rankings, and I moved AJ Brown back only 2 spots. I put Hopkins, finally, I know you guys like that, above him, and I put Calvin Ridley at number 5. But I had Brown at 6. I'm still cemented in. I think he could finish top 8 for sure.
Look, I've got Ryan Tannehill at 9 right now. You know, especially moving Aaron Rodgers down because of the chance that he sits out the season on top of, you know, obviously Matt Ryan. I basically flip-flopped Matt Ryan and Ryan Tannehill. And I think that's a fair thing. When it comes to AJ Brown, I moved him down 1 spot, and the only spot was below Calvin Ridley. He's still my wide receiver 6. I love him. Like, he doesn't need volume. And you know what? Even with Julio there, he's going to get volume. And so it's not a problem to me.
That's basically what.
Oh,
he cut out.
Oh, Jack cut out. I know what he was going to say. I know he loves Ryan Tannehill.
Ryan didn't have anymore. We said they were going to flip, and that's what wound up happening.
Oh boy.
Yeah, did I freeze there? My screen froze for a second.
You froze.
Gonzalez went through that.
All right, am I back now?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, so I was basically saying that's what we said we were going to do. If Julio Jones went to Tennessee, we're getting Ryan Tannehill above Matt Ryan. I think that's basically what's happening here.
As for AJ Brown, I know you weren't the biggest fan out of the 3 of us on him. How far down did you move him? Because I feel like you probably moved him down a little bit further than both of us.
I mean, not actually too terribly. I'm in the same boat as you guys that he doesn't need the volume. The touchdowns are going to be there. As I said earlier, he scored 11 touchdowns last season. It's not like those targets are going anywhere for AJ Brown. So I'm good with AJ Brown right now. He's definitely below Calvin Ridley for me now. That switched up. That's always been the case, and that's going to continue to be the case.
Before we wrap this up here, each of us are going to get 1 second, basically, to talk about the Falcons. Who do you guys think? Pick one player had the biggest impact now on the team. Now
Kyle
that
Pitts.
Julio Jones.
Kyle Pitts.
Okay.
I mean, it's clearly Kyle Pitts, and you know what? Calvin Ridley obviously is going to be impacted positively, and part of that is because they have Kyle Pitts now. We talked about last year. Calvin Ridley performed better typically when Julio Jones was on the field than off the field. Kyle Pitts will step in, replace Julio Jones, but he won't give Julio Jones level production. Like, absolutely not. You can't expect that out of a rookie tight end, even one of Kyle Pitts' caliber, which will be better for Calvin Ridley. But without Julio Jones there, Kyle Pitts also absolutely moves up. I've got him as my tight end 6 now.
Kyle Pitts stays at tight end 4. I'm absolutely good with that. Matt Ryan does take a hit. I think that's a huge hit for Matt Ryan. He's basically in the same exact situation he was last year with maybe even a little less talent, but Pitts should be healthier than Julio Jones was last year. I'm just hoping, fingers crossed, that Julio Jones stays healthy.
I lied. He's my tight end 5 above Mark Andrews.
Yes, I also have him at tight end 5, although I could see myself moving him to tight end 4. I'm also just a tiny bit worried that they play him at wide receiver and that maybe Yahoo ESPN says, oh, Kyle Pitts is a wide receiver now, which would, I think, freak everyone out, throw everything, everyone's projections, everything out the window, because now obviously Kyle Pitts at the tight end position, elite, wide receiver position,
Shane.
Probably top 20 still, but.
I'm going to throw it out there. I don't think that ever happens. They tried to do the same thing. I was hearing the other day, tried to do the same thing with Jimmy Graham a while back, a couple of teams, just for franchise tag purposes, because if you're in the franchise tag, you get paid in the top tier. So if Kyle Pitts remains throughout his contract, the tight end, then he gets paid like a tight end if they have to franchise tag him. If he goes to wide receiver, he gets paid a whole lot more. So they're gonna try to keep him at tight end as long as they possibly can.
Good. We're safe. Right before we wrap up, Mike Davis, Russell Gage, 2 guys that are not getting talked about enough right now. Russell Gage is going to step up to be that wide receiver 2 in the offense. Still probably be 3rd in targets behind Pitts and behind Ridley. And Mike Davis, my guy, Mike Davis, I've moved him into my top 20. He's going to see a huge boost in production, especially on the target forefront with Julio Jones now gone. I love Mike Davis going to next season, as long as, hopefully, cross your fingers, they do not bring in an Adrian Peterson or Le'Veon Bell to ruin that backfield. Keep it as is right now. Keep Patterson back there and let Mike Davis work. All right, that's going to do it for us here on the Fantasy Football Laboratory YouTube page. You can click that subscribe button down below. A lot of content going to be coming out on our page as we get closer and closer to the actual fantasy football season kicking off. It's draft season right now, and we are going to help you guys dominate your draft, school the competition, and get ready to win some fantasy championships. For the chemist Jack McGrath, Spitfire Lucas Parrish, I'm the King of Trades, Shane Palma. Have a great day.